This is Caminantes, where you are invited behind the curtain of the 2021 CAMINOS Festival and into the creative minds of this year's Caminantes.
Think of this podcast as the theater lobby, where people can mingle and talk about the incredible art they're creating.
Then you start recognizing the type of displacement, through little codes of communication, of little codes of how the people move on the space, how the people dress.
Here in Saskatoon, my reality was totally different from when my family was living in Ecuador in March last year.
Everyone just needs a place to live and enough food to eat.
Me seeing that meant that as an artist, I needed to respond to that.
In this episode, you will hear two conversations. First, we'll hear from 2/3 of the Triangle Collective and the artistic producer and creator of Ay Caramba Theater. Let's get started.
My name is Yulissa Campos, and my show is Trapped. Right after I graduated, and I went through this phase of getting tired of auditioning for roles that I was never seen, or there were not many roles for people of color here in the prairies. So that's why I decided to start creating my own work and my own theater and see how this new journey will take me. So when I was thinking of writing my first show and producing the first show here in Saskatoon, I needed a theater name. So I wanted something that was easy for the Anglophone audience to pronounce. And I always remember watching The Simpsons and hearing Bart Simpson saying, "Ay caramba," I'm like, okay. Well, back home, I'm from Ecuador. So when we say "Ay caramba," it could be a word of expression of excitement, surprise. It could be also frustration. It has many meanings. So it was very global, and it will. I think it opened the door to many ways of interpretation, and that's why I wanted my theater to be.
So my name is Coman Poon. I also have a Chinese name, and it's Poon Homan. I identify as he, him, and I'm based in Toronto, Toronto, but I'm currently dialing in from Chotarque, Montreal.
Hola, my name is Olga Barrios. I am original from Colombia. I am work between Colombia and Canada as a bridge, exchange projects. Our project is called Life and Arts in Times of COVID. This is kind of playing with the title of Garcia Marquez's book, El Amor en los tiempos del cólera, right? So we play with that sensation of life and sickness, right?
And our third member of the Triangle Collective is Edgardo Moreno, who is Chilean-Canadian based in Hamilton, Ontario. The three of us often are in migration or moving from one place to another. So it became very obvious that we were always in some sort of reformation of a triangle, and never together, but at the same time together through the digital.
We started this project before pandemia, actually, and that's how I start founding really intimate connections with my friends, really far away, getting to the intimacy through sometimes the cell phone, that you go into your bed and you are reading into your bed and suddenly, whoops, this friend appears and have all that information to you, and you start having a conversation in any moment, at any time, right? So that was a really cool feeling at the beginning of our project. So we were sending image of where I am. Here is where I am right now. This is what I'm doing at this moment. This is happening in Colombia, and then in another place. And I am here at the airport getting into Toronto. No, this type of signals, right, through the space was really, really intriguing. And I think it changed after COVID, right? After COVID started, we were so busy with the digital that our connection also something happened there after that.
We were, using initially Facebook Messenger, and then we started making little works of art and sending them to each other, and then waiting for the other person to take time to digest and to receive the work. And this particular process we call art conversations, because it's I throw a ball out at both my collaborators, and it's a reflection of my local experience, my personal experience, and I want to offer the filter of making art as a way of transmitting, but also digesting what is happening. And it's an offering to my collaborators who receive it as gifts, and they're in turn not rushed into it, but in their own time, they process what they pick up from the work and integrate or respond to it. And then we take turns leading these prompts. This is our methodology that evolved out of necessity, but also out of kind of a resilience to what happens when you don't get the path that you think you're going on is not showing up. Well, you find a way around. Yulissa, tell us about Trapped and how it references the real issues and comes from the real issues that it deals with.
So displacement is something that has been happening since forever. And when I went to Ecuador in 2019, I got very shocked by the situation that we were having, where I could see more and more immigration from Venezuelans, refugees there, and how the ambience changed. And I could hear friends being not happy about it, people being a little bit not hostile, but defensive about the fact that we were having newcomers to the country. Even though we come from Latin America, we share so many cultural aspects. Yes, we are different, but at the same time, we are similar. And to me, I'm an immigrant here, so it was heartbreaking to see how some people were treating them and now welcome them when I'm in a place where I've been treated like that. We struggle with femicide, and it's just the government never does anything. And then later on, with more research, I've encountered that this is a global problem where it has happened in Canada and anywhere where it's just they don't care. But so in that time, there was this big news that happened in one of the cities in Ecuador, in Ibarra, where a woman was murdered on the street by her boyfriend, and the police didn't do anything. It just happened that her boyfriend was Venezuelan, and that was enough for the people to put the attention to the fact that he was Venezuelan, to start kicking out the people out of the town. And even the government turned their eye to the fact that, oh, we have so many immigrants and this is getting out of hand because criminals are coming here, when that was not the case. The case was men are murdering women on the street and nobody's doing anything. Because I bet if the guy was Ecuadorian, the story would have been different. So to me, Trap is so vividly, and it's a current issue. And even now, with the situation in Afghanistan, it's just like every time there's something going on in the world that shows us that displacement is never ending. And to me, Trap was so, even though I started writing it 2 years ago, it keeps coming as a current issue. Different setting, different story, but it's the same current issue where displacement, segregation, xenophobia, and lack of opportunity is so prevalent in a country where people are just striving to find a better life somewhere else.
Yeah, with that, it's also present in Canada.
Exactly. When I was reading about the Triangle Collective, I was very pumped when I read that you got inspired by Times of Color, Gabriel Garcia Marquez. And I love Gabriel Garcia Marquez. So I'm just intrigued what brought you to him and write something about, I guess, inspired about his books, because he's such a Colombian icon and a Latin American icon in literature.
Leave it to me. Well, at the beginning, it was more like a game of words, right? Because it's like right now, many things are happening in the time of the sickness, of the cholera of today, right? The COVID is our cholera, right? And Garcia Marquez, he takes us through journeys of magic realism, right? And it takes us through journeys of stories like love in times of cholera, but it's surrounded by the context of the social, political that is happening right now. At that time, at that moment, while the story was going on, right? So there is this story, but there is so many issues in the social, political, and cultural moment. So we're doing that too. We're looking around what is going on with our social, political, cultural, and the difference and the contrast between the third and the first world realities in times of cholera, right? In times of COVID.
Are we very deliberately reframed it as, instead of love in times of COVID, it's art and life in times of COVID. And part of the way in which my understanding of the way we work and why I value it is that there's a growing sense that there isn't a separation between art and life, that there is artful ways of living, but there's also this notion that the separation between art and life is often because of capitalization and the art market. We aren't so interested in that. We're interested in the origin of art as integrated into life and integrated into understanding positionality. Earlier on in the last 18 months, we were sharing this news item about how the government initially proposed that vaccines would not be made available to Venezuelans in Colombia. And that was just like outrageous to me. I didn't understand the health logic, nor did I understand kind of the reason behind it. And it, in some ways, it has a kind of echo to what you were talking about with Trapped, you know, that there's these parallels that are happening, and we want to scratch at this because we want to understand what the cause and effect, but also the daily life of people who have to live in these contexts, not just Venezuelans, but Colombians, and understanding what it is to have been put in such strict lockdown at the very beginning. How did it jump to that versus how we experienced it in Canada, and how has that impacted and led to the student strikes that are happening today?
Yeah, that actually brings me to another question that you mentioned, how life, you know, at the end of the day, you notice that even in a pandemic, the people who has priorities, the people who has power. And unfortunately, some of us come from places that we don't have power, and that's why we decide to move somewhere else, right? To look for better opportunities. But something you say, Coman, about living the reality of COVID different from other places is true. Here in Saskatoon, my reality was totally different from when my family was living in Ecuador in March last year. They were in extreme lockdown and people were dying. Hospitals were packed and people were panicking. Meanwhile, in Saskatoon, we were in a lockdown, but it was different.
When the lockdown was so strict here and I was going out, the streets were empty because we were able just to go with a number, right, to the supermarket. And if you were stopped by the police, they would give you a fine and etc. Right? So I was wondering because, like in the last years, we see the people walking on the street with their bags, and we know are the Venezuelans moving around, right? And you know that the people is displaced in this country, but also there are other displaced people from Venezuela. So, but then you start recognizing the type of displacement, you know, through little codes of communication, of little codes of how the people move on the space, how the people dress, you know, like it's really interesting how we start discovering all those little details, you know. And I was really like wondering about that displacements, like people were not allowed to be on the streets, but what is the people that is living on the streets? Because let's say like a year before pandemics, there was like, let's say a gas station where people would start like living there, you know, doing their camps. And it was like, it's not people that used to live on the street. It was like regular people, just like they didn't have place to stay. They just start organizing their own camps. And I was like, wow, what is that people right now? They are like giving vaccines just to certain people. And it's been crazy how they are like giving the vaccines here. Like you have to chase the vaccine. Right? You are like, and they're like giving an announcement all over, like, you should put the vaccine because we want to, you know, like if we were in like a first world country, right? The advertisement is different than the reality. When you see the advertisement, you're like, go on vaccine because we want to be all Okay, right? And then when you go for the vaccine, there are not enough vaccines. So people is chasing the vaccine. My husband had to go to another city to get his second shot, so, and then they are cutting the opportunity of the Venezuelans. So come on, we're all mixing here, because this is another big issue in our countries, class. If you belong to this class, you have the opportunity to have this. If you don't have it, sorry, you have to die. So basically something like that, no? So the layers are full there. Yeah.
Also, I remember, Olga, you had shared something that was really powerful and landed in my heart. And at the beginning of the pandemic, you had said, being in quarantine is a privilege here. And that was like, wow, right? Just sit with that and go, COVID is only one of many things that surfaces the faults of society. We talk about in the Triangle Collective the differences in national and regional responses to threats that are brought on by pandemic in our own localities, and in context of like unsustainable hyper-individualism and neoliberalism. We want to ask what is dying, right? As well as what is emerging and what will be born, because we're interested in understanding and artistically responding to our own day-to-day experiences as a framework for looking at what is happening in this time of massive change and upheaval and societal collapse.
That was Olga Barrios and Coman Poon from the Triangle Collective and Yulissa Campos from Ay Caramba Theater. Next, we'll hear from the creators of Login, Password, Logout, and Park Life.
My name is Janis Mayers. I am an artist from Toronto. My pronouns are she, her, they, them. My project is called Park Life, and it's basically, I'm on volume 2 right now. My aim is to make 3 chapters that will be pools of information to draw my second draft from. So I'm talking about the root, the past, and then part 3 is the hope in the future and the present. So I'm looking at the good and the bad, but in part 3, I really want to focus on all the positive, wonderful stuff, like what Rhoma cooking for everybody with sweet hand delights, and working from community with community. And that's everything that I'm talking about. So it's really cool that we're both here to talk, because she was one of the people I wanted to talk to.
So hi, I am Rhoma Spencer. I'm an actor, a director, playwright, a comedian, and quite a foodie at heart. My side hustle is being that of a chef. And I am originally from Trinidad and Tobago, settled here in Toronto for the last 20, wow. Oh my God, it's 22 years already. Oh my God, it felt like I was just recently off the boat. And I've been working with Aluna. I have had now 2 residencies with the company to develop one, my play, Dance Macabre, and then in the CAMINOS Festival with another piece called Login, Password, and Logout. This piece was created from a series of sound bites and texts and emails that the public sent in from a call that Convergence Theatre did back in March 2020, where they asked the public to send a text, an email, or a sound bite over voicemail about how are they coping with COVID. I chose 9 submissions. I chose 9 pieces from the submissions. So it's what I call a mashup of 9 pieces to create. Then it was called Home Rec, but for CAMINOS, when I submitted it for CAMINOS, I've since changed the name from Home Rec to Login, Password, and Logout. So that's moi in a nutshell. So Janis, I really like what you're doing with your piece. And I noticed that there is an image of the medicine wheel in the piece. I really love the fact that you're using it, because I know that you do have First Nations in your culture, in your heritage, that is. I want to know how are you making use of this and why you chose to do that?
Well, just to stay true to the Indigenous way of telling a story, using it as a dramaturgical device to help shape what I'm talking about. So you have the external, the directions, and then the center, which is the heart. So there's one thing missing from the medicine. Well, it's not missing unless you know to look for it. You just see the directions and the four corners, but there's a red dot in the center, which is the heart of the matter. So my volume 1, which I shared with the buddies in Bad Times, sharing in June for Pride, that was the heart. So I went right in with the main heavy conversations. It's a bit intense. And part 2 is the container outside of the heart that's holding it together. And then part 3 will be the structure, talking more about, dare I say, predatory economics, and the Toronto Housing Coalition and these governments that set. It's a system that I don't like using the word trapped. You just have to navigate your way out of it. But what I've found along the way with the writing, the medicine wheel, think of it more as a snail and a coil, because it can be big and it can be small, but it's always spinning. And there's a beginning and a middle, and not an end, but rather a rebirth. And I'm being informed about it a lot with the creation along the way here. Oddly enough, I'm the camera woman working with us, lives in Regent Park, as do you. So I'm getting to experience and see all the positive things that have come out of this, and also talk to other people who have had other experiences.
And you're telling a story about, clearly your childhood past, growing up in Regent Park.
Yes.
And how much of the story that you're telling is what I call biomyth drama? So it's both almost autobiographical, biographical. It is also maybe some myth, because we tend exactly. So is it indeed what I will call a biomyth drama?
Yes, and then other things, like things that I've witnessed that I feel the need to say something about, because some things just have to be said. But yeah, it's all from firsthand experience and my own personal experiences growing up there, which isn't everybody's, mind you. It's, we all have different roads.
Yeah.
What I'm kind of fascinated with, there's a part of my piece that I'm going to be sharing that it has some grounding in park life, but it was also heavily inspired by how we live right now. And I'm just assuming how much of, let's say, even the past 6 months, how things have changed. How much has that informed your writing with polishing this up?
Well, certainly, as I would have said before, it was inspired by people's response to COVID, how they were living at that time. We're talking about between March and May 2020. That's the first wave. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then in the middle of that came George Floyd in May, when we were all told to stay home, separate, isolate, and quarantine. And then comes George Floyd murder. And people just said, fuck that shit. We are taken to the streets. Ain't got no separate, isolate, and quarantine no more here, And so to me, something was being said. There was a bigger statement to me when the people took to the streets like that, and not just Black people, everybody, Black, white, brown, yellow, polka dot, everybody. Me seeing that meant that as an artist, I needed to respond to that. To me, in order to save my sanity, writing is what held me together during this time. Writing, creating, whether it's writing, writing a proposal, writing for a grant, writing a play. That is what helped me during this time. If there's anything I could say about how I dealt with the pandemic, I dealt with it through writing.
Both of your shows in the CAMINOS Festival, from what we understand, they have to do with home, either a home that you had once or a home that's changing. And Rhoma, you live in Regent Park right now.
Mm-hmm.
So our question is, imagine Regent Park in 2031, which is 10 years from now. What would you like to see in Regent Park?
That poverty, there's still pockets of poverty now. A lot of homeless people are, is within the vicinity. I wish that in 2031 that they all will be housed. By 2031, I can walk the streets in peace and not be bothered by, you're seeing, all these tents in the lovely green spaces that we have, finding ways to make sure that everyone have a home. 10 years time, I think it wants to look like a very inclusive neighborhood, whether you're rich, you're poor, or you're in between. And we all live in harmony. What I like right now, there's there's cultural diversity in Regent Park. That is what I appreciate and love. And I will think that in 2031, it would be the same and even more. So I would say definitely that all persons have access to housing.
And what I'd hopefully like to see is the purpose of why they gentrified. I hope that comes to fruition. So again, inclusivity, community access. The kids need music programs. They need open gyms, the aquatic centers accessible for everyone, and safe enough streets, So again, there's plenty of units for everyone. So just the housing crisis in Toronto as a whole, we know it's catastrophic. And everyone just needs a place to live and enough food to eat. And ideally, optimal society, that's what we want for everybody.
And that was Rhoma Spencer and Janis Mayers. All of these artists are bringing their new works, which are still in development, to the CAMINOS Multi-Arts Festival.
This year, CAMINOS is presenting the art of 32 different groups, both live and online, from October 12th through the 24th. Go to caminos.ca on how to see the shows and to support these artists. A special thanks to Benny Esguerra and New Tradition Music for the beautiful theme music.
We are speaking to you from the shores of this beautiful Zaga-Igan, known to some as Lake Ontario, in Toronto, or Dagarondo. This is the ancestral territory of the Haudenosaunee, or Longhouse Confederacy, the Anishinaabe Nation, the Wendat, and the Mississaugas of the Credit. This land is covered by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum and Treaty 13, also known as the Toronto Purchase.
At Aluna, we remember that people can begin to heal when they are hurt. We are committed to artful participation in disagreements. We are committed to unsettling ourselves towards connection, respect, and justice for all people who now live in this city, which has been a meeting place since time immemorial.
Radio Aluna Teatro is produced by Aluna Theatre with support from the Toronto Arts Council, the Ontario Arts Council, the Canada Council for the Arts, the Department of Canadian Heritage, and TD Bank.
Aluna Theatre is Beatriz Pizano and Trevor Schwellnus with Sue Balint. Radio Aluna Theatre is produced by Mónica Garrido and Camila Diaz-Varela. For more about Aluna Theatre, visit us at alunatheatre.ca, follow at Aluna Theatre on Twitter or Instagram, or like us on Facebook.
Miigwech and Nyawangoa.